Thank you very much, Anna. We're very close to click and test or click and cure. Next speaker, quantified self is at its hype. We use trackers. You can measure your vitals to assess different things. Motion, basic heart activity, analytics, sleep patterns. They're vastly used to cover general sports activities or wellness. But how far are we how far are we from medical applications? I have the pleasure to welcome Jörn Watzke, Senior Director, Global B2B Business Development at Garmin Health. The floor is yours.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here in this beautiful city, this awesome venue. And as mentioned, probably a lot of people ask themselves and say, what is Garmin doing? They are consumer wearables. I know them from navigation, from my marine, from my airplane or whatever, but in the healthcare. That is what I want to talk in the next 15 minutes about it. First of all, we have a lot of experience in the wearable. Our engineers, very GPS focused, had the idea to put a mobile device on the arm and use it for running in 2003. And since then, we're developing wearables and have a lot of wearables with the evolution now from very much fitness focus more to a holistic health focus. In 2014, we created the division of Garmin Health, where we said, okay, how can we enable partners to use the data to offer services on top of this? How does it work? First of all, we should not forget, in the center is the user, the patient, the customer, the employee. And here, there are thousands of partners which offer different services, health services, fitness apps, IoT platform, analytic solutions, healthcare services for these consumers. And they're serving then different industries, so corporate employers which want to increase efficiency, bring the cost down, bind the customers, insurances, using this for underwriting, loyalty programs with new customers, gyms, fitness, and healthcare stakeholders. And here is where Garmin is plugging in. So we serve on one side the consumer with devices, which is in the healthcare system very important. Do not stigmatize the people that you have a medical device. And on the other side is open interfaces to these partners, and these are thousands, which offer this kind of services to get this data. Before we go show which kind of data I want to show you a little bit how difficult it is to capture data. Because when you capture for instance, the PPG, we call it, this is the heart rate data from the arm, then we have a little green LED which shine in, which will not be absorbed from the skin. And there, the capillaries in the first millimeters reflect this data. And then we have a sensor which then read this data. And this is a raw signal, a typical raw signal which you can see here, which you get out of it. When I raise my arm, the impact on this signal is 100 times higher than the heartbeat. So therefore, when you have a good movement, don't be Kermit the Frog. Fortunately, we have a 3D acceleration sensor in 3 axes, which you can see here, which we measure in parallel, and then we use this acceleration data to filter this data. And then what comes out is then PPG signal. This is what you see here on the lower end. The upper side is a typical ECG signal. This is what you get from the diode, and this is a real truth value. So you see the PPG signal is much more rounded, but meanwhile the accuracy is really, really high. And especially what is interesting for us is what we call BBI, beat-to-beat interval, where same thing, where you can derive then the heart rate variability. And out of the heart rate variability, you can read a lot. And cardio experts know this, how important this is, but also stress, fatigue, drowsiness, many, many things can be read out of this. So what we have seen by this signal as well, when we analyzed here this kind of raw data, we have seen also that here with Kermit, we have seen also a kind of rhythmic noise, and then we realized, oh, that is the respiration. Because when I respirate, also this has impact on the capillaries, and we have seen this, and our engineers then filtered this signal out. So, but this is also very important. So all our wearables offer now a respiration level. So this is a data which we did in a sleep apnea study with many hundred patients. And you know, in the sleep apnea, in the sleep laboratory, you're using typically two redundant sensors, a thorax sensor and a nasal sensor. And even these are medical grade sensors. You're not really sure. They don't correlate all the time. So what you see here on this one is this kind of signal where the thorax and the nasal sensors, and you have to say these are apnea patients. They have apnea during the sleep. But you see the red line is correlating really well. And so we measure our consumer devices a lot against these medical devices. And that was the reason why NHS and so on use more and more this kind of also in clinical studies. And you can imagine for the patient, it is much more convenient to wear a consumer wearable than a nasal sensor and a thorax sensor during the night. So you see this get more and more into, and when I talk to all our partners and say, these are the sensors which all our watches currently provide. Everybody knows you have steps and GPS signal, but we have also acceleration data, high resolution, gyro data integrated. We measure 24/7 the stress, which you can read a lot. How the stress is, how is the recovery during the night, what are the REM sleep phases, the heart rate variability, the resting heart rate over the time. Arno have showed us how important this is to pre-identification. Germany made a study where people can donate their data and they evaluated the resting heart rate. And what is known, when you get fever by 1 degree Celsius, your resting heart rate grows by 8 beats per minute. So, and what they found out, then the government, if you have millions of people, and then in a dedicated area from one day to another, many people increase the resting heart rate, means for sure there is infection. You don't know, is it COVID, but there is infection. So this is definitely, there is so much power in this kind of data. And the advantage is all this data, 24/7 available, high resolution, you can log it. We have interfaces where you can say, Garmin should be out. We get direct access to the data, and so on. So this is a really revolution in this market. So there are many, many interfaces how you can get the data. Important is, we don't share any data. If you come to me and say, hey, Garmin, you have millions of data. Here are $5 billion. We say, no. You can get all the data, but I don't share, the customer shared. So we share the data on behalf of the customer. So that is important. So there are many interfaces. Here is an example. We are API where you get 24/7 data, then locked, and even when the customer sync, then automatically push the data to the partner. We have interfaces, especially in studies or where you need to respond, where you get real-time interfaces where you share the data. In studies, this is also needed. This can be also locked, and if the Bluetooth connection is interrupted, we have direct access and so on. So then, for the interfaces, how you get the data, there's not a good, better, best. There's always depend which kind of use case you are using and what is the right interface. As I said, we have there thousands of partners which are using this from corporate wellness, fitness, worker safety, monitoring of drivers, of people in the mine, and so on, gyms. But a very important growing part where I talk today is patient monitoring and research. I promised when I come here that I talk a bit about the future. where we see things coming. And what you see here is future, but already reality. One thing is where it's used is rehabilitation and therapy. And this is also recognized by the governments. You probably heard in Germany, the DIGA program, where the government is pay this per prescription, apps and services. Here are 2 examples. We have cases for Parkinson. And they're using, for instance, the gyro and the 3-axis acceleration sensor to measure the severity of the tremor. And meanwhile, the medication for Parkinson are pretty well, but unfortunately, the body is adjusting and you need quite often to go to the doctor. But as a Parkinson patient, you have typically 2 visits a year for a short time. And how do you feel over the time? That's really hard to say. Sometimes you have a good day, sometimes you have a bad day. And they are using this kind of data to make an automatic adjustment of the medication and really helps the program behind. Same is with their programs in the DIGA program for stroke patients, for a rehabilitation program. And you know, stroke is really high variance of impacts you can have, and the same for mental health. And there are many programs where the wearables are used in rehabilitation and therapies. I think the future is that we go into the prevention. Currently, I go to the doctor and say, I have full-blown diabetes, please fix it for me. That is wrong. We should go early and see when identify the risk, and as earlier we go into this, into the prevention, then as lower are the costs and also the benefit for the user. And this is for everything available. And the thing is again in the data. For instance, depression. Everybody of us have the same step pattern. From Monday to Friday, on the weekend a little bit different. And unfortunately, it's very sticky. We are really addicted to it. This is the reason why it's so difficult to live better and change our behavior. When you get a fall in a deep phase, in a dark phase of a depression, whatever, in early, your step patterns are changing. Your stress level over the night is changing. The stress level over the day, the recovery is changing. So there are many factors. You cannot make a diagnosis, but you can come to a very high probability. The same is pre-diabetes. A lot of people go to the doctor when they have full-blown diabetes. A healthy person has 50% deep sleep phase. A person with full-blown with pre-diabetes without medication have up to 60% deep sleep phase. Yes, there comes a comment and say, yes, a woman in the age of 50 in the transition period also can have similar symptoms. Yes, but if you combine this with all the other parameters, you come to a probability of 90%. And it's not to come to a diagnosis, it's come to a risk and say, please go to the doctor for this diagnosis. And I think if we go this path, we will make the world much better. So that is, these are things where definitely the future is. I come to my last point, and this is clinical researches. And we see here there is a huge benefit in using wearables in these clinical researches. By many things, you get real-time data, you have high resolution, 24/7, you have devices which do not stigmatize the user, very data transparency, and so on. So we have thousands of studies already. We show this also where you can see which studies are used. And it says that currently 10 to 15% of all clinical studies and research studies use wearables. The forecast is that this grows to 50%. So this market will multiply by 5 in the next 3 years. So this is a huge development. Wearables means currently 60% are smartwatches, and this part will even grow to 72%. So this is, for us, a real motivation. We see this, and we want that the wearables becomes a companion, a health companion, which help you. We see also interworking between stuff. We are working with Dexcom together. So will come also soon to Europe that when you use Dexcom for your glucose measurement, why not see the data directly on the wearable? You don't need to test and show and so on. So the interaction between other medical devices is getting more and more a trend. I hope I inspired you a little bit and showed the direction how the world comes together and how we should work closer together. If you have ideas, I'm here available if you have questions. And we are really happy because we are working with partners. Our business is based on partners. And that was, I believe, all. Thank you very much.